All right, you guys, releasing guilt. This is an interesting one. I'm going to use myself as an example as well in this particular case. I'm recording this. I realize some of you are at work. Some of you may not be able to join, but I will at least leave the recording for you guys. When it comes to releasing guilt, I think the hardest thing for us to do is not look back and judge our past moments, right? Like it's something that we've done, we've held on to things at some points in time. We've had some things that we've had to really take a hard look at ourselves and really truly think about that, and what I want you guys to understand is this is a normal part of our evolution. Many of us have to understand that that's part of self-acceptance, that the judgment and that we've done to ourselves, we are much harder on ourselves than we are on other people sometimes. And so we carry this. And so I would like to use myself as an example. I carried a lot of guilt in my lifetime because when I lost my son, I went into a very severe depression. Perhaps it was the only time in my life that I could ever relate to being my mother and to having that sort of compassion towards her, because before it happened to me, I had zero compassion for my mother. And when I say zero, I mean zero. I felt like I was a victim of my circumstances. I was mad at her for being so depressed and so checked out. And when I say zero compassion for this woman, I'm telling you, I mean, I had zero compassion for this woman. Okay. Now, it took me stepping into the situation, becoming my mother, understanding how I made my mother, and my part in this, because if everything is made in your image, you will understand sometimes there will be times when we encounter people that just don't look like us or where we can't relate to. And in my childhood, I could not relate to being my mother. I wasn't there yet. And so in this particular case, I held a lot of guilt because I numbed myself completely. I numbed myself for everyone's protection because I was a raging ball of anger when I lost my son. When I say I raged, I mean, you don't understand. I probably would have pushed the atomic bomb button. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Like, I was there. I had zero empathy. I was just angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry at my situation. I was angry at the loss. I was angry at God. Okay? Because I was like, how can you take the one thing that was mine, that was truly mine, that was so pure and so loving, and how dare you? And I was so angry that anyone that was in my path unfortunately got the raw end of the stick with me, because I just wasn't available to anyone at that point. And so unfortunately that included my daughter. So my daughter got to see firsthand how I grew up. And so I harbored a lot of guilt because of it. Okay. Now, because I didn't deal with it, because I harbored this guilt, I tried making amends for a very long time. I did everything I could to make it up to my daughter. And in essence, I created a monster. My little girl has zero appreciation for what I went through, how I got out of it, or any of the things that I've done for her, because she got stuck in the past reflection that I was trying to make amends for. So I'm not even blaming her in this particular instance. I know how I made her in my image as well. And so that meant forgiving myself yet again and letting her go in the process. And so what I want you guys to understand is that all of this review and everything that you guys are doing, when you're really looking at yourselves and you're really taking into account the things that you've held on to, what I want you to know is that this is not a pass to beat yourselves up. This is not a moment to get stuck in all of the things that we've done wrong. We've all made mistakes. I include myself. 100%. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be able to recognize these things. I wouldn't be able to stand up and talk about it. I wouldn't be able to even recognize what I did with my daughter, or recognize what I've done with my mom, or had this sort of evolution of character that has developed because of it. And so what it boils down to at the end of the day is we're looking for self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and self-acceptance. The affirmations that I wrote, and I included a lot of them, was for you guys to really understand that this is the most important part of our journey. It is the guilt that we carry that then projects onward. And I want you guys to understand this clearly. Guilt requires punishment. This is how our society has been built. It's what we do, right? If someone commits murder, they go to jail. If, if someone does something wrong, they go to jail. That punishment, okay? So if you harbor this guilt and you do not address it, there will be people in your life that will punish you. This is the reflection. You're holding it inside. This is why it's so important to let it go. And many of us do this. We beat ourselves up for no reason. And when we don't want to beat ourselves anymore, we let go. And then all of the reflections outside start doing something similar. And so that's what's really important here in this particular instance, is to understand that we're letting this go for ourselves and for the collective. We're letting the idea and the concepts of punishment go. We are letting go of the concepts of, we're rooting these things out, and we're forgiving ourselves for everyone's sake. If we are the source of our reflection, then everything we see outside is going to be just like we are. And so there are sometimes situations in which, we really, really need to look at that and own it, but not to beat ourselves up over it, but to be able to rectify it, to be able to rewire. And that's what we're doing with our mirror work. Our mirror work, more than anything, is an opportunity to really self-examine and to pull out these weeds from the garden of our mind. Many of us don't realize that we have never left Eden. We never left. Okay? What we have done is built in a lot of shame, guilt, fear, all kinds of things that prevent us from seeing Eden. And that's what we're here to fix. It is probably the most important thing that we will ever do in a long time, is to really let that go, to free ourselves from these situations. It is the most critical component of our awakening. See, in order for us to be able to see ourselves in everybody and to be able to accept the reflection and to understand it and to have compassion for it, even as we want to or are tempted to react, this occurs because we have released the judgment on ourselves. We have released the guilt on ourselves. We understand the human design. If we really truly understand the human design, then on Earth, in 3D, the whole purpose of our existence and the whole reason we are here is to understand how we are made and how every body is our body. How that we're sitting in the middle of a hall of mirrors, quite literally the source, and every person that we see outside is projecting the thoughts that we don't know that we are. And so every human being in the world does us an extreme favor of showing us inside ourselves in order to heal. And it's easier said than done sometimes. I get it. Sometimes I forget and I get lost and I get triggered. And I can honestly tell you, I get triggered like 1% of the time now. Before, that was not the case. And that's because we are still going to be humbled at times, but the purpose of it is not to stay there. It is to honor the reflection as it's being shown and how to really, really understand what's going on within ourselves, to release it, to transmute it. A lot of times we don't realize we don't even have to deal with those people out there. We don't have to. It resolves itself. But we must at least be willing to look at ourselves. And in this way, we're not bypassing 3D. We are honoring 3D and understanding what's being shown, and always, always taking a moment to forgive ourselves and others. If we understand that before we ever came to Earth, we set up some of these lessons in order for us to really evolve, and that sometimes people are playing some really ugly roles. I know this. I lived through it. I get it. And a lot of us don't understand. We think, why would we set up something so horrible for ourselves? Well, we're here to serve the collective. We're here to be in our heart space. We're here to demonstrate forgiveness, the type of forgiveness that Christ was known for, the type of forgiveness that allows us to be the Christ, the type of forgiveness that allows us to assert our word into the reflection and have it change before our eyes. Many of you ask me a lot and often, how do I change this? How do I change that? You change it by realizing that everything is made in your mind first and then must by law be reflected out there, and that we must at all times be able to look out there objectively, detached, and then be able to look inside and correct ourselves, but also do it with self-acceptance, with forgiveness, with a true desire to be loving towards ourself and our reflection. It doesn't mean we accept bad behavior. It doesn't mean that we continue to beat ourselves up. It means that we demonstrate this out in the world so that the world then demonstrates it for us. And that's probably the most important thing we can ever do. Right now, what I want us to focus on is really accepting everything that we are, because these experiences are so beautiful and valuable, and many of us don't realize that. No matter how ugly it was, no matter how bad it was, those are some of the most beautiful aspects of ourselves, because it's how we pull ourselves out of these situations that determine our character. And a lot of the times we get stuck on the situation, right? And so we can't move past it? Yeah, fix that. Because if you understand the full picture and you keep allowing yourself to be untethered and move through time, what you will see is that they formed an amazing person, a beautiful person, a ridiculously awesome person who now has compassion for the next person that reflects this in the collective. The whole purpose why we came down here. But we have to be willing to step into that heart space and act from that place of love, you know? And there will be times that we will encounter ignorance. Yeah. Guess what? It's our past lives being reflected back, our past thoughts before they had evolved into what we are now. So of course we've got to show compassion. Of course we've got to giggle. We've got to smile and laugh with it. And still, you know, we've got to really be able to look at ourselves and not hold on to that guilt. That's the most important part of the journey. It's still about forgiveness, but when it comes to guilt, it's more about forgiveness of self than it is about forgiving others out there. We've been working on forgiving others out there. We've been doing the exercises, but at the end of the day, we are still coming back to home and knowing that the guilt that we have held on to is really just a misjudgment of our actions. A lot of times what we don't understand is that as long as we're holding on to these things, there will be people out there that will mirror things that we don't want to look at. I get it. And yet they are doing us the extreme favor of getting us to halt. To halt in the video game. To halt in the middle of our imagination as it's being displayed outside for you to review. And to really look at yourself with some deep self-acceptance. Like, oh yeah, I remember when I did this. I remember when I did this. Or I know how this was formed. And when you have that type of ownership, you then have that type of ability to rewrite it with your conscious stories. It's one of the biggest lessons that Neville teaches. The pruning shears of revision, or the ability to revise how we see things, is our greatest gift. Our greatest gift. And sometimes we have to take a bunch of moments, a bunch of now moments that happened in our past, tie them all together and give it a new meaning. Because what has happened is we didn't do that. And so we look at that little moment over there, and we look at that little moment over there, and we look at that little moment over there, and then we hold all of these things and we judge each of those individual sections, and we fractured our soul in every one of these sections, and then we are tethered to that. Okay? Now what we see outside becomes a collection of those fractured moments. And that's what we're trying to resolve. Our greatest task as human beings right now is to glue ourselves back together, is to really, really find self-acceptance, true self-acceptance, the type of self-acceptance that doesn't care about the opinions of others, since clearly you are looking at your unconscious thoughts being reflected back as people, places, and things. Therefore, your ability to speak in the now and to correct your attitude now and to really truly step into that power, the kind of power that allows you to change everything around you, is huge. That's why we're going to do it. We're going to do it like our life depends on it. We're going to let go of everything that we've ever feared, of everything that we've ever felt bad about. Because at the end of the day, what I really need you guys to remember is that 3D is little r real. Little r real. That means that we get to exist in a holographic simulation of our thoughts on display in order for us to understand ourselves. It is little r. It's as real in the sense that currently, right now, we can't walk through what some of us cannot walk through walls yet because the race mind doesn't believe that we can. Little r real. In the ultimate reality, we know that wall doesn't exist. And so it is just merely a vibration. And so we adjust our vibration and we can literally walk through a wall or anything else for that matter. These are things that will occur in our evolution the more we evolved. How do we get there? We get there by really examining ourselves and forgiving every aspect of ourselves that has ever held on to the anger, to the guilt, to the worry, to this and that. And a lot of us are in relationships or out of relationships that we want back in, and we are feeling extremely guilty over the way that the relationship has gone. Right? The direction in which it went. And so you're holding on to that guilt. Well, let me tell you something. You hold on to that guilt, you are no closer to bringing that life partner to you than you were before you broke up. It's not going to, it's a repelling force. It's just as repelling as being needy. Needy is not a pretty thing. It is very, very repelling. Like, I even so much as sniff the stalker vibe, and I'm like, yeah. It's a repelling thing. So is guilt. So is guilt. It keeps people away. And many of you are trying to unify yourself. There's no division in divine mind, and you're trying to find this place because here's where all of your power is. So today I want to make sure that when we look in the mirror, that we use these affirmations, that we really, really examine ourselves, and that we really, really say, hey, I accept you as you are in this moment. I totally understand that you made up this story to come down to earth in order to evolve as a human being and demonstrate your mastery to the collective so that others can learn how. Because you know what? There's a lot of people that have been stuck in these patterns for a very long time. And as the heavy artillery, as the people that live by example, we need to be able to demonstrate that. Not just say it, but demonstrate it. In order to have an untethered soul, in order to be in the present moment that is heaven, because God's time is now. It's always now, 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 now. There's no, I don't know, future, this, that, and the third. It's all now. Now we label these things, and I use these words only to describe a measurement of your point in your point of space-time, your awareness of it. If it has not yet occurred in your reality, I will call it future for your benefit. But the time exists now already. And if it has occurred already, then I call it past just for the language and semantics of 3D. Because all of these things are occurring now. So I use these words and I always italicize them, or I do my best to put them in brackets so you guys can understand what I'm trying to say when I'm describing these now moments. But the most important thing here is that we are all trying to untether ourselves from the past. We are working really, really hard to let go of what we have lived. And it's the reason, and I've said this a million times already, and I'll repeat myself a million times more, it is the reason that the word devil, when looked at through the mirror, is lived. Because that is what will limit ourselves, our past experience. These are codes left by the ancients and the people that wrote these books. There's no such thing as a devil. There isn't. There's no such thing as two powers. The belief in two powers is what causes all of this turmoil in the first place, is that we label things evil, is that we do these things. Well, we wouldn't be seeing it if it wasn't inside of our awareness. And when it's inside of our awareness, we project it out and then we call it evil. Without owning it, without removing it, without taking the responsibility of our universe, we cannot control our universe. But we have always had dominion over it. And the only way to step into that and the only way to get there is to really forgive everything, most importantly, ourselves. Most importantly, ourselves. Many of you know what I'm talking about when you know it's rainy outside and you want sunshine and you just make it the sunshine. That's what I do. You know, or I need rain somewhere, so I'm going to declare the rain into existence and it's just going to happen. That kind of power occurs because you are untethered. You know that your guilt that you're holding yourself to is holding God to that. And so God is then limited. God in you is then limited to that experience. It's not real. It's little r real. In order for you to see the illusion as you declare it into being. Okay? So the most important part here is that we're learning to master the little r reality in order to be one with the big R reality. That's where we're headed, is in that present moment. And so in order to be there, in order to really step into our power, we must be willing to let go of our judgment. We must realize that everything we see outside is only occurring because it is a snapshot of the things that you've declared into being. So releasing guilt and releasing this is the most important thing you can ever do. I know I've said that twice now. I'm trying to really cement this home because I know that once this occurs, your suffering ends. The people outside that seem to be punishing you end. We must be willing to let go of our perception of our parents. We must be willing to let go of our perception of the world. There's a lot of stories out there, guys. There's a lot of stories that the world wants you to attach to. And from the minute that you guys do that, you have given your power to someone else and not to yourself. And so that's when all of a sudden you guys think that there's such a thing as illness, and you think there's such a thing as murderers, and you think there's such a thing. All of these things, yes, but they exist in your awareness. And the minute that you start healing yourself, you have the ability to change the illusion outside. And that's what we're here working on. That's what's really important here. It's where I'm trying to get everyone to catch up to. I want you guys to know what that's like. You know, you think that I want to be a coach forever? No, this was my retirement plan, you guys. I know I'm not going to be in this seat forever. It is our destiny to remember who we are. So I know I'm not going to do this forever. This was never my intention. I know that the reason that I chose this path is because everyone is going to find a way to really discover who they are, master the mystery of themselves, and step into that power. That is the end goal. It is the goal that I know has already occurred, and it is the goal that I'm simply declaring every single time I speak to a person. It's what I do. I'm just believing in your ability to overcome. I'm believing in your ability to see past the illusion, and I'm believing, and I step into it, and I stand there knowing that that's what's done. I don't believe in limitations this way for you guys. I can't. That would be holding on to things that just are not true of you. God in you is the most powerful force in the universe. And many of you have not taken the time to look into the mirror and discover its power in you. And that's really what we're here to do. At the end of the day, many of you have the ability to heal the sick. Many of you have the ability to step into all kinds of things. Many of you want money. God gave it to you already. You're just sitting there believing in the outside reflection that says you don't have it. You want a partner? God gave it to you already. You're just believing in the outside reflection that says you don't have it. And then guess what you guys do? You look at the reflection outside and let the outside reflection determine your inner state. Then your inner state then perpetuates what's going on outside. And now you're stuck in a 3D box. That's not how it works. Not how it ever works. You look at the outside reflection, yes. You look at it, then you tap into who you are. It's free of guilt. It's completely forgiven. It is love. It is everything. It is the force that is the glue that holds everything in this universe together. And then you declare something with your will into being, and you stay there. And then what happens is, and you don't have to say anything. You can do it in secret, inside. What happens is you look outside, and then outside then changes with you. That is the power that you all must discover, that you all must learn. It is a fearless type of living that allows you to tell the mountain to move, and it disappears. It is a type of living that gives people hope, that allows them, healers don't heal anything, right? It allows you to simply remind someone of who they are, because by law, they must be forgiven, free, love, God. That's the law. And if we're not seeing that, then they are doing us the extreme favor of helping us to figure that out, and then we push that out into the world, and then the world changes with us. That's what I really want you guys to understand, that we are in the era 5D, we're all already here, whether we consciously are aware of it or not. And in this era, matter is like liquid. It forms to our will. And many of us are so used to being rigidly stuck because we've done things backwards. Like I said, we look out there and then we let out there determine our in here. That's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look out there, and then we do not let out there determine our in here. We affirm what we are, and then make sure that that in turn becomes what we see out there. That's what I want you guys to learn. That's what I really want you guys to work on. So today, when we're working on releasing guilt, what I really want you guys to understand is that we are in the middle of an illusion. We are in the middle of a holograph. Yes, it is as real as it's going to get, because it is a snapshot of your inner state, and you are working on more than ever on self-acceptance right now. Full self-acceptance, meaning that if you have made mistakes in your past, own them and understand that they made you who you are today. And then love that person. Love that person now. So please, the journaling exercise that we did yesterday, burn it. Symbolically show how you are giving it to God for transmutation. God isn't guilty. God's not guilty. Neither are you. You and God are the one and the same being. So this whole self-beating and crucifying ourselves to situations isn't necessary. The whole point of releasing ourselves from these scenarios is so that we become untethered, so that we can be in the present moment. And this way, what occurs, you'll notice, ailments start to go away. People stop appearing as they've been, and they change. You guys have been practicing this and you've seen it. You know, the partner that used to be repelled suddenly appears, along with 20,000 other guys. It's true. But you have to step into this real self-acceptance. It's fearless type of love that you give to yourself, and then in turn becomes the reflection that you see outside. And when people don't accept you as you are, that's okay. They don't understand where you are in the moment, but understand that that might be your past reflection. Maybe there's something in there that they're trying to teach you that you need to be able to look at and say, oh yeah, I remember when I used to be that. Let me fix this. And then move on. But there's power in self-acceptance. There is power in not self-beating. There's power in really getting a hold of that inner conversation. And sometimes, you know, I encourage everyone to read Michael Singer's Untethered Soul quite a few times over and over again, because there's a line in that book that says that we've been trapped in there with an egomaniac. And that's important. That's a very important part of the process, is really befriending that voice and making it work for you. It's part of the self-acceptance process. This may take a little bit, you guys. Be willing to do the work. Be willing to look at yourself with loving eyes. Use these examples as something that will free you. Because I promise that the more you practice this, the more the outside changes with you and the less conflict you have. And then you become one of those, you know, those people. I used to envy them so much, and now I've become one of them and I love them. That has relatively low problems in life. There's like little things that's like, it's like you kind of float through life because life is good. You know why? Because that's what God intended for us to have in the first place. First, we have to work on ourselves. First, we have to be willing to master this reflection. And when you do, I promise you that this is worth it. The journey is worth it. Be willing to do it. So I left the exercises. As I said, I deviated from the book, kind of came up with my own. Feel free to impart any of your own. This is a collaborative effort. But know that, yes, I held guilt. I had lessons to learn. And I also let them go in order to free myself and my daughter. In order to be able to interact in a world in a totally different way. Know that when we trap ourselves in our past, that is what causes our suffering, our pain, and our illusion of illness. And many of us are working on making sure that we're getting healthier, happier, and connecting with our now moment. You know, I'm going to make one more recommendation. There's a movie on the Gaia channel. It may be on YouTube. I'm not sure. Called Emotion. I recommend that. It catches us up with the present and helps us realize how we have been stuck in the past a lot of the time. That stress and anxiety and all of these emotions have to do, and depression have more to do with being stuck in the past than it has with anything else. So I encourage everyone to consider watching that as well and really, really stepping into their now moment, because it is well worth it. I love you guys. We'll resume our mirror talk soon. I hope that this is helpful, and I hope this visual is working with everybody. Love you guys. Bye-bye.